All right. So what do you need to know about becoming a U.S. citizen? Again, thank you for joining us at Alcorn Immigration Law on today's webinar, where we overcome borders, expand opportunity, and connect the world by practicing compassionate, cutting-edge, and rigorous immigration law in the service of the betterment of humanity. I don't know why I always do that one, but whatever. We're bettering humanity. At least we're trying to, all while maintaining a really high success rate during what was honestly the most difficult 5 years of being in the field of immigration. This is me. I'm Anita Koumriqian. I'm one of the partners here at Alcorn Immigration Law. I'm a Santa Clara alum, and I went to UCLA for my undergrad. My expertise is family-based immigration, and that encompasses U.S. citizenship. And I have experience practicing family law as well. So divorces, which really helps up my family-based immigration knowledge because they kind of somewhat go hand in hand. I'm the partner at our firm that handles all of case production. So any cases that are coming in, they spend some time on my desk one way or another. I'm an immigrant myself, which is why I decided to become an immigration attorney. I'm a proud American. I naturalized through my dad, which Cori will be speaking about how somebody can do that later on in today's presentation. I was raised Armenian, 100%, so proud to be Armenian. And I was born in Iraq, so lived the American dream. Here is my green card and my sister's green card. They're not pink. Back when we were all considered resident aliens. Little Anita down there used to get offended that anybody would ever think that I'm an alien because I wasn't. Still, I'm not. I'm just a human. So that's me. Cori, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody this afternoon?
Yeah, so my name is Cori Farooqi. I am a family immigration associate attorney at Alcorn. I also went to Santa Clara Law, but went to UC Santa Cruz for undergrad. Prior to working at Alcorn, I was working at a nonprofit assisting survivors of trauma with their immigration matters, which was a very rewarding and tough way to be introduced to immigration, but I did love that job. I was born in the US, but I am the child of an immigrant and have a lot of immigrants in my family and a lot of diversity, so I always felt like a natural connection to the area of immigration law.
Awesome. So like Cori, a lot of our awesome team members are directly somehow affected or impacted by immigration. All of these lovely faces here are either immigrants themselves, the child of an immigrant, they're married to an immigrant. One way or another, it just affects us, which helps grow our compassion. It makes everybody just kind of love what we do a little bit more because we've been in the shoes of an immigrant before, so we understand kind of what we can do to be delicate with immigration. This is our network. We support individuals from this network. We are supported by individuals from this network. Very proud of who we support and who we are supported by and who we can connect ourselves to, who we can connect our clients to. So if you ever at any point are thinking, I wish that I knew a good business formation attorney, reach out to us and we'll see who is in our network that we can connect you to. So what we are kind of all here about today, what do you need to know about immigration? This is a super high level overview of immigration and about the citizenship process. There's 2 pathways that somebody can slowly get down the pathway towards US citizenship. And step 1 is coming to the United States, either as a visa holder or as a green card holder. So the very first pathway is right up top here, where you enter the United States as a visa holder, whether it's entering as a student, entering on an H-1B, entering as a tourist, whatever it may be, entering the United States legally as a visa holder in the United States, and then some way, somehow applying for your green card, being a green card holder for a specific duration of time, and then applying and qualifying for US citizenship. Another pathway is coming into the United States. You've never been here before, but you enter the US as a green card holder. A little pink alien resident Anita, I entered the US straight away as a green card holder. I was also really young. I was 4.5 years old. I had never been in the US before. So I entered straight away as a green card holder. Years down the line, qualified for US citizenship and became a US citizen. So both are pathways, this exact same, not exact same pathway, but ultimately lead to the same end goal of US citizenship. Now, oftentimes we have individuals that will reach out to us who are inquiring about a green card, and they say, I want to become a citizen of the US. And I'm like, awesome. How long ago did you get your green card? No. I want to get my green card. So let's not confuse the two between being a lawful permanent resident or a green card holder and then becoming a US citizen. US citizens get passports for the US, whereas green card holders are still US, they're still green card holders. They have a green card, they're lawful permanent residents of the US, but they continue to hold the citizenship and passport of the country that they previously held, or if they're dual citizens, multiple countries. So immigration during COVID, oh man, there's never been a dull moment. Cori, do you want to walk us through what it's been like for us and for immigrants?
Yes, so immigration during COVID has definitely been a little different. Across the board, there's been delays with case processing, and specifically here we've listed biometrics and interviews both inside and outside the US. So for interviews that are being scheduled in the local USCIS offices and then interviews that are scheduled at the consulates and embassies abroad, we've seen significant delays there. They are starting to pick up, but still delayed. During COVID, USCIS for local interviews is allowing telephonic appearances, which we've appeared at many of them. They've gone excellent. I've had no issues with them. They're great, but we've been doing telephonic appearances for those safety precautions. And then also during COVID, there were several presidential proclamations that were put into place. The one that did function as a visa ban, though, has since been lifted, but those COVID travel restrictions are still in place by presidential proclamation, preventing entry from certain countries, especially the Shenzhen area, which includes a lot of countries. And then most recently added was India and Brazil. Also during COVID, there's always been the opportunity to request an expedited appointment, but there has been more release on, I would say, like guidelines on how you can get an expedited appointment during this time while they're experiencing significant delays.
Awesome. And to clarify, Cori, the telephonic appearances at these local USCIS interviews, is it for the applicant or is it just for the attorneys?
It is just for the attorneys. So attorneys can appear by telephone. Applicants still need to go in person to their interview.
All right, awesome.
There are also new entry requirements to enter the US. So you will need to get tested, have a COVID test done no more than 3 days before you travel by air into the US. You need to show your negative result to the airline before you board your flight, or if you did test positive for COVID, you need to have a doctor's letter showing that you have recovered. I would say to always look this information up. It's constantly changing as the pandemic rises and falls. So I would always say this is what it is right now, but please always look this information up before traveling.
Yeah, that's a really, really good piece of advice. Things change what feels like hourly. So always a good idea to check the most recent happenings. One question that we get often, or more recently as well, is do I have to be vaccinated in order to enter the United States as a visa holder, as a tourist? Right now, it is just that you have to show a negative COVID test. There's no requirements about vaccination status or any of that, but still always check before you travel or don't travel. All right, so now let's roll up our sleeves and finally talk about US citizenship through naturalization. So there's two different words within USCIS. There's naturalization and then there's citizenship. For the most part, they're almost the same thing, except when it comes to the title of the certificate that you get. So when you are over the age of 18, and you are applying for US naturalization, ultimately you get a certificate of naturalization, which says that which ultimately means you're a citizen of the United States. But so here, in order to qualify for US naturalization, AKA citizenship, you have to have been a green card holder for either 3 years or 5 years, which I'll go more into depth in a second. You have to have been physically present in the United States for more than 50% of your time. Again, we'll go into the physical presence requirement in a second. You have to be a person of good moral character, among other things. And these are the kind of high-level overview of what the requirements are. You're going to be interviewed. They're going to there's going to be a test at the interview where they're going to test you on your English reading. They're going to test you on your English writing. They're going to ask you to study and memorize 100 civics questions. Of those 100, they will ask you 10 of those questions. As soon as you get the first 6 of those 10 questions correct, you have passed and you could be eligible for US citizenship. So in that case, you just need a solid D average in order to qualify for the testing portion of US citizenship. Ultimately, at the end of the interview, they will let you know kind of what's going on. And then the final step of the process is that they will schedule you to attend an oath ceremony where you will be sworn in as a US citizen. They will take your green card from you, give you your certificate of naturalization, and then you are a full-fledged US citizen. So super high level overview, but let's go ahead and break down. Actually, before I break that down, let me talk about the difference between the 3-year requirement and then the 5-year requirement. So on average, and for more people than not, an individual will qualify for US citizenship after having been in the United States as a green card holder for 5 years. Now, that again is for the most part. However, if you are married to a United States citizen and you have been married to that United States citizen for 3 years, and you've been living with that married United States citizen for 3 years, you actually qualify for US citizenship in 3 years, and you don't have to wait a full 5 years. Why does USCIS do this? I actually have no idea why US citizens get that. Being married to a US citizen, you get that perk, but I don't question it. I think it's pretty cool. So you could qualify for US citizenship at the 3-year mark instead of having to wait 2 additional years at the 5-year mark, which is pretty cool. But with that, you obviously have to file the application with your marriage certificate and minimal proof that you have been living with that US citizen for the 3 years and for that full duration of that statutory period, which is those 3 years. So when in doubt, wait it a little longer. When in doubt, ask an immigration attorney to support them. So then physical presence, this is one of the bigger, this is one of the requirements that people have to kind of postpone US citizenship down the road. So the physical presence requirement for US citizenship is twofold. Number one, in the past 3 years, if you are married to a US citizen, or in the past 5 years, whatever your statutory period is, you cannot have any trips outside of the US that are longer than 6 months in duration. And that's for one single trip. So if I leave the United States on January the 1st, and I'm going to go to Armenia for an extended trip, and I have a strong hope and desire to apply for US citizenship, I need to make sure that I come back to the US before 6 months has elapsed, so that I can make sure to preserve my right to qualify for US citizenship and apply for US citizenship. So no trips longer than 6 months in duration. In addition to that, I also have to make sure that I've been spending at least 50% of my time in the United States over the course of the last 3 or 5 years. Again, depending on which you're filing under. So if it's 5 years, I have to make sure that I have no trips, no more than 913 days outside of the United States in the last 5 years. And if we're doing 3 years, 548 days outside of the US. So quick math calculation there, 365 times 3 or times 5 divided by 2. And we have to make sure that we're in the US for at least 50% of the time. And now people will ask, well, what happens if I don't have, what happens if I have a trip that is longer than 6 months? Or what happens if I have 950 days outside of the US? What do I do? Well, you're just gonna have to wait a little bit more so that you have a full 5-year or a full 3-year statutory period with no interruption of 6-month trips, no interruption of that 50% time in the United States. So my biggest piece of advice to you is take note of every single trip that you're taking outside of the United States, because it's a doozy. It honestly, for some people, I feel bad that they have to recount all of their trips, especially people who travel on business. It's tough. But keep record of every single time you step outside of the United States, the day you left, the day you returned, and the countries you visited, because that is required. You have to provide that information on the citizenship application. So that's the physical presence requirement. Anything you think I missed or want to add, Cori?
No, I think definitely for people who travel often, this could be a tough requirement because you might think that you don't have any trips that are longer than 6 months, but you still might not have like those requisite number of days. And so it could still delay that application for citizenship. So definitely keep track of that information if you are looking to apply for citizenship by a certain time period.
Yes, exactly. And then another requirement before we get into good moral character, there's also other requirements. You have to make sure that you file your taxes. You have to make sure that you otherwise are like everything is fine in terms of whether or not you qualify. You don't have crimes, or if you do have crimes, they're not bad enough that it's going to disqualify you from becoming a citizen or from being able to hold on to your green card. And so with that, like that criminal history comes good moral character. Now, in order to qualify for US citizenship, you will have to prove that in the statutory period, again, the last 3 years or the last 5 years, you are an individual of good moral character. What the heck does that even mean, right? Well, the formal definition for good moral character is that is character which measures up to the standards of average citizens of the community in which the applicant resides. So basically that means if you're living within a community, if an average citizen would not act the way that you do, then maybe you're not a person of good moral character. So with that, US citizenship is very jurisdictional. Meaning it's very focused on where you're living at that moment of time, and then at that moment that your case is being scheduled for interview. So somebody in San Francisco can technically have different good moral character requirements than somebody living in, I don't know, Alabama or in North Carolina. So they could have different good moral character requirements because of the standards of what an average citizen is. Now, you have to prove that you have been a person of good moral character and will continue to be a person of good moral character. And with that, again, it's really criminal activity and conviction and history related. So with that, things that will put your good moral character into question is anything related to dishonesty, theft, fraud, or intent to harm someone or something intentionally. So with that, as long as we can make sure that none of that really appears on your criminal history, or you don't have like 5 DUIs, and you're not a habitual drunkard. And actually, it's one of the questions on the form, actually. Are you, or have you ever been a habitual drunkard? So as long as we can show that, then we should be good to go. Now, let me say, if you have any sort or type of criminal history and you have questions about that, seek assistance of an immigration attorney and a criminal attorney as well, potentially, so that we can make sure that everything will be a-okay with your application, because the last thing that we want to do is file an application on your behalf, or last thing I want you to do is file an application that can be that's not necessarily approvable, or that can ultimately put your green card in jeopardy or on the line. So with that, good moral character, super wishy-washy, mushy-gushy. I don't know what other kind of words you want to throw in there. But if you have any questions about that, that means you should really speak with an immigration attorney before you consider US citizenship. Now, filing for US citizenship while an I-751 is still pending. What is an I-751, Cori?
I-751 is it's a form. It's called petition to remove conditions. So basically, when a U.S. citizen or a green card holder petitions for their spouse and their spouse's green card is granted within the first 2 years of marriage, they get something called the conditional permanent resident card, which is only valid for 2 years, and then they need to file this I-751 to remove the conditions on their green card so they can then get a 10-year green card. But these 751s, I think, Anita, you're going to go into, have very, very long processing times and can run into the N400 or the naturalization eligibility as well.
Right. So you file an I-751 at the 2-year anniversary of having your conditional green card, which at the 2-year anniversary is when your conditional green card is going to be expiring. Processing times on the removal of conditions is 18 months. So do the math. If I have to file at the 2-year anniversary and it takes 18 months, well, I will qualify for US citizenship 6 months before the processing times of that 751. So can I file it at the same time can I file for US citizenship at the 3-year anniversary as soon as I qualify, or do I have to wait for my I-751 to be approved first? Well, actually, USCIS encourages individuals to file the US citizenship application while that I-751 is actually still pending. They do this, I don't know why they encourage it or why they kind of push this. At least the local office in San Jose specifically does, because what they'll ultimately do is the citizenship application will kind of like push along the I-751 removal of conditions application. And ultimately, when when the citizenship application is being scheduled for interview, the I-751 will already be in the file, that removal of conditions. So they'll be able to review, interview, and adjudicate both of the applications all at the same time. So it kind of is a kill 2 birds in 1 stone kind of thing. Buy one, get one free if you want to sound a little more good moral character. But with that, it's feasible, it's doable. So why not? All right. So Cori, can you please go into becoming a US citizen through your parents? So like I said earlier, I became a US citizen through my dad. How did I do that, Cori?
Yeah, so there are technically 2 ways to receive citizenship through your parents. One is acquiring citizenship, which means that at your birth, when you were born outside the United States, at your birth, you were already a US citizen, or you automatically became a US citizen by your US citizen parent or parents. Then there's deriving citizenship, which is a little bit different, but basically with deriving citizenship, it means that certain conditions have been met when your parent becomes a US citizen, or at the time that your parent returns to the US and you are a green card holder, that you can then derive US citizenship from your parent. So both of these have a lot of other nuances to them, but that's the general idea. So acquiring is really you're a citizen at birth. Deriving citizenship is after birth, but still becoming a citizen through your parents. And then different laws apply to determine whether you automatically became a US citizen at birth or after your birth, but before you turn 18 years old. So these laws have changed a lot over the years. So it can get a little complicated depending on all the factors involved, but this is still a possibility.
Right. So the key here is kind of figuring out when you were born, when your parents became US citizens, if it was only one parent or both parents who became US citizens, prior to the year that you became, the year you turned 18. So just kind of anecdotally, my dad became a US citizen when I was 12 years old. Because he became a US citizen when I was 12, I automatically became a US citizen through him. So instead of having to file Form N-400 and becoming a US citizen on my own, I was able to file Form N-600 and obtain what's called a certificate of citizenship to prove that I automatically became a US citizen. Another anecdote, if you derived citizenship through a parent and you qualify for US citizenship through derivative status through your parents, they will not give you a certificate of naturalization. They being USCIS, will not allow you to naturalize because you're already a US citizen. So we had a client who came to us and was like, hey, I've been a green card holder for 5 years. I want to become a US citizen. We're like, okay, awesome. Let's go through your application. We filed an N-400 for her. Day of interview, we get to the interview and the officer calls us back and is like, I can't interview you now and I can't approve this application. And I was like, what happened? What did we do? And she was like, girl, you're already a US citizen to my client. And I was like, huh? And so with that, she was like, we're going to do this, that, and the other to figure this out. Your dad became a US citizen before you were 18 years old. You were in the US as a green card holder. So forget this application, go and file another application, Form N-600, so you can just get proof that you're a US citizen. So before you apply for US citizenship, ask your mom and dad, hey, how old was I when you became a US citizen? Because maybe I'm already a US citizen. So again, with this, different laws apply to different years of birth and different periods of time. So before you file an application, specifically before you file an N-600, make sure that you have the laws correct and that the correct laws apply to you, because a very unfortunate fun fact about Form N-600 is you only have one shot. If you apply for it once and you don't qualify, you can actually never apply for it again. Very, very weird with how Congress has N-600 set up, but just be careful with the N-600 process as well.
I think also just to know, it's very strange because with the certificate of citizenship, you're actually just getting evidence of your citizenship. You've already become a citizen, but Anita's correct. They don't let you apply a second time if you don't do it correctly the first time and it is denied. It's
You're
unfortunate.
Right. Super, super good point to bring up, Cori. Thanks for that. Is somebody can live their entire life. They can actually, if you derived US citizenship, you don't necessarily have to do an N-600. You should get an N-600 because it's evidence, it's proof of your US citizenship. But I could have actually gone with my dad when he was getting his passport, when the day after he became a US citizen, I could have gone with him and I could have gotten my passport through him. I didn't have to wait to file Form N-600 for me to be able to then get my passport. So with that, sometimes people will ask, well, why would I go and get this certificate of citizenship if I could just go and get my passport? Isn't the exact same thing? Well, kind of not really. They both prove that you're a US citizen, but a passport expires, a passport can get taken away from you, but the certificate of citizenship does not expire. It can't be taken away from you. And with the N-600 process, USCIS, when you apply for US, that certificate of citizenship, and same with when filing for the N-400 as well, USCIS will communicate directly with the Social Security Administration and let them know, hey, here's our, I don't know how they do it, if it's annually, if it's monthly or whatever it is. Hey, here's this new batch of US citizens, update your records. So eventually there's a whole list under the Social Security Administration with benefits and all of that fun stuff about who is a US citizen, because different benefits apply to citizens versus non-citizens. So all the more reason to definitely get these types of things sorted out.
So we did a little bit of like requirements to file certificate of citizen, just general requirements. So if you're claiming US citizenship based on your birth abroad, the law at the time of your birth determines whether you require US citizenship at birth, but generally you must be born outside the US to a US citizen parent, and the US citizen parent has to have lived in the United States for a a certain period of time. So the period of time also has changed with the law. So that's why it's a little broad there. But it gets a little tricky for like people who maybe were born to a US citizen, but their parent is living abroad with them. Maybe they can't meet that physical presence requirement. And so they might not acquire the citizenship at birth necessarily, and will have to derive it later. And that's the next slide here, I believe, is if you're trying to claim citizenship after your birth, but before you turn 18 years of age, it's the law in effect when the last qualifying condition was met is the law that applies to you. But again, generally the following conditions that have to be met are that you're under the age of 18, you're currently residing in the US in legal and physical custody of a US citizen parent, and you yourself are a permanent resident of the United States. So this is, Anita, what occurred for you. You were also a green card holder when your dad naturalized, and that's why you're able to also derive citizenship.
Right. So that's one of the key pieces of it. You have to, the child has to be a green card holder too. So what happens to a lot of children, like for example, even those who are adopted, an adopted child could potentially enter the United States as a green card holder. As the child of a US citizen, they enter as a lawful permanent resident first, and then upon their entry, as they enter the US as a lawful permanent resident, they actually automatically become a US citizen too, because they have entered the US as a lawful permanent resident. And then from there, they are under the age of 18 and the child of a US citizen. So they're a US citizen too. So pretty neat. Mm-hmm. All right, so becoming a US citizen, the journey to citizenship, what is it like? On the right-hand side of our screen is the pathway to citizenship. I believe that you guys will all get a copy of this at the end of today's webinar. It kind of just walks through the pathway of what it looks, what applying for US citizenship looks like. You prepare an application, you file it with USCIS, you'll get a receipt notice. After you get a receipt notice where USCIS is saying, hey, we got your application for citizenship, yay. From there, you're waiting for USCIS to schedule your case for biometrics. Biometrics is when they take your fingerprints and your photos, and they do a whole host of background checks, state, local, federal, international, across a whole bunch of different databases that will get basically your whole history about you. And so with that, you are then in the waiting game for your case to be scheduled for interview. You go to that interview, assuming everything at the interview goes well and you're approved, your case will be scheduled for an oath ceremony, at which time you'll be sworn in as a US citizen. You will do the oath of allegiance. Again, they'll take your green card. They give you that certificate of citizenship or naturalization. And then from there, boom, you're a US citizen.
I just want to also highlight that path to citizenship does have the processing times or the timeline based on the delays we've seen with COVID over the last year and a half. So those can change too, just so everyone's aware.
Everything always changes. Yeah. And then preparing you for interview, kind of walked through this already. You'll get your biometrics taken and all of that stuff. And then what you should do to prepare for your interview, make sure that you have all of the documents ready to take with you to your interview, review your Form N-400, and make sure that all of the information in it is accurate, that you remember it. And what we like to do is fully help prepare our clients for the interviews. We'll do what we call a mock interview, where we will go over tips and tricks of what to expect at the interview, what to say, what not to say, what to take with you, what to leave at home, what to wear. And then we'll switch gears and that's a question. Honestly, I would ask that question all the time. What should I wear, Anita? So from there, we'll switch gears, and we like to pretend like it's the day of the interview, and we ask all of the clients what we expect the USCIS officer to ask at time of interview. We don't help with the English reading and writing portion of the exam because that's all self-study. You've got that. But then we do like to go through the 100 civics questions and ask all of the questions and make sure that the client has at least one more, our clients have at least one more round of practice on those questions. And we can, kind of give them a reality check if they haven't studied enough. It's hit the book. So you got to make sure that you pass this, pass with a D average, this little test. And that's preparing for the interview. Day of interview, you will go. In terms of the English reading and writing portion of the exam, it's a pretty simple test if you ask me. If you ask my grandma, who took the English test when she was like 75 years old and spoke no English, I think she thought it was really difficult. But for the most part, the questions that they ask you to read and then they will thereafter ask you to write is something like who lives in the White House, and then they will ask you to write the president lives in the White House. I feel like almost all of my interviews have that question, or who is Abraham Lincoln? That's a common one.
Yeah.
What other common ones do you get, Cori?
The White House one's very, very common. I get that one a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
So with the English reading and writing, and with the civics test too, actually, at the time of your biometrics appointment, USCIS will give you a little booklet. That booklet will have all of the questions. That booklet will have like a word bank as well of these are the words that you have to know, and you have to be able to read and then write during the interview for the English reading and writing test. But in addition to having to read one sentence and write one sentence, you have to be able to have your interview. You have to be able to hold a conversation with the officer and be able to answer the officer's questions during the interview. Unless you qualify for a medical exemption, that is also like kind of baked into the US citizenship application, and a part of the interview for the English test. And then at the interview, sometimes an officer will be able to tell you, I've recommended your case for approval. Next, you'll be scheduled for an oath ceremony. You go to that oath ceremony and you'll be sworn in as a US citizen. After that, you can apply for a US passport. Other times an officer will say, I will let you know if I need any additional information, and kind of send you on your way. I always tell people that is officer dependent. If you get an officer who is more senior and is able to approve cases without supervisory review, then you'll get an officer that will be able to approve your case without recommend for approval at the end of the interview. If you get a more newer officer, all of their cases have to be reviewed by a supervisor before they can approve. So don't worry if you're not necessarily right away recommended for approval. Some cases are more difficult than others, especially if there's any crimes associated with it. So that's the approval. And then once you're a US citizen, you have all of the rights. You're a US citizen. I mean, what's more to it? You can travel to most countries without a visa because that's a benefit of becoming a US citizen. You can obtain federal benefits. You can apply for some federal or state jobs. Some jobs require you to be a US citizen in order to apply to them. What's super exciting is that now once you're a US citizen, who you can petition for to get their green cards expands. So as a green card holder, you can really only apply for basically a spouse or a child. Once you're a US citizen, you can apply for a spouse. You can newly apply for your parent. You can newly apply for your siblings, and you can apply for your children as well, which you could before too. But pretty exciting that you can now apply for those people. And it's usually why people will rush to want to become citizens, so that they can slowly start to petition for their parents or their siblings as well. As a US citizen, you can vote. As a US citizen, you can run for state or local offices, positions. As a US citizen, you get to qualify for US jury duty. Not US jury duty, just for jury duty in general. I don't know if that's a benefit or if that's why somebody is like, forget it, I don't want to become a US citizen. But another thing to think about. Sponsoring your family members, again, as a US citizen, it's a lot of times what really pushes people to want to apply for US citizenship quickly. Immigration proposals. So that was kind of the end on the US citizenship. Now kind of just giving you guys a little update on the proposals, or what's in kind of immigration pipeline right now. There are a couple of different bills that are with the US House and with the Senate right now in terms of immigration reform and immigration changes. One is the US Citizenship Act of 2021, where the highlights are just kind of bettering our immigration system, more working visas, clearing backlogs, new different pathways for individuals with advanced STEM degrees to get their pathways of green cards, making the H4 EAD, making that a permanent pathway. I don't know why the H4 visas are always on the EAD specifically are always on the chopping block. But so making that more permanent, preventing children from aging out, that is a huge deal in a lot of different categories where children under the age of 21, when you file the application, at a certain point, they will age out of the system, meaning they're no longer 21 in the eyes of USCIS. So a reform there, I think, is so incredible and so needed. And then a new regional economic development green card, basically in parts of the United States where there's not a denser population, inviting somebody to come and live there so that they can kind of populate that area of the United States. And then keeping families together is a new idea and a new pathway where if an individual has an approved I-130, which is the foundational part of a green card application to petition for your family, if you have that first portion of the application approved, then they will allow you to actually prematurely enter the United States so that you can start establishing your life in the United States. So that would be incredible if that's passed. Actually all of these are incredible if they get passed, honestly. Elimination of the 3-year and the 10-year bars is something that is being considered. That's if you have unlawful presence in the United States and then you depart, you will either have a 3-year or a 10-year bar of re-entry triggered against you. Ideas of making it easier for family reunification, speeding up the process, increasing the number of green cards available under the diversity lottery program. And then back to my pink card earlier on in the slide, stopping using the words alien and calling people non-citizens instead. We already are actually seeing this in action, which is pretty cool. And then another is a pathway to citizenship, which is being considered and is actually really is strongly being considered right now, which would give individuals who are in the United States without documentation, who have TPS, who have DACA, giving them a pathway towards US citizenship. So it would be phenomenal if this would be a pathway or an option available to us all. A little update on DACA. It's back to where it was during the Trump administration, where new initial DACA applications are not being accepted. The individuals who already have DACA status are able to continually renew in 2-year increments, but for the time being, no new initial DACA applications are being accepted. With the DREAM Act,
they will accept the DACA application, they just won't adjudicate it. So the ones that have been accepted are just going to be on hold indefinitely until they can actually make a decision.
Yeah, until they can actually adjudicate it and approve it. Thanks, Cori. And then so we have the DREAM Act as well, where this is another one of the pathway to US citizenship, where there's one with the Senate and then there's one with the House of Representatives, where there are these 2 bills that have some significant differences, but both are a pathway to US citizenship. And I say citizenship specifically because it's an ultimate pathway towards US citizenship, where obviously the first stop is a green card. It's a long haul. It's going to still take a while. As you can see here, an individual will be a conditional permanent resident for 8 years or 10 years before they will eventually qualify for US citizenship as well. But so these are some of the things that are happening in Senate and House right now. So keeping our fingers crossed there. That is all we have for you this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to go through the question and answers now, but before then, consider our firm, consider Cori and myself resources. Let us know what we can do to support you. answer any of your questions, and ultimately help you realize your American dreams. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have a podcast that everybody at our firms actually chips in on. It's primarily ran by Sophie, but we're all guest stars on it as well. It's called Immigration Law for Tech Startups. Have a listen, it's pretty cool. There will be one about naturalization coming up in the next several weeks. You can email us at hello@alcorn.law. That's our phone number, that's our email. Feel free to reach out to us and let us know what we can do to support you or your loved ones. All right, let's get into some Q&A. I don't see any in the Q&A. I see some in the chat. I would encourage you, if you have any questions, put those questions into the Q&A function of Zoom, but I'm gonna go ahead and read the questions. How are the processing times for citizenship by marriage, and can applying for citizenship possibly delay approval of the removal of conditions? This is a great question. So this goes back to filing an N-400 while the I-751 is still pending. With this, it will not cause a delay, and at least that's what we're being told from the local office supervisors directly, that if anything, it will just hurry up adjudication for both of the applications. So we are being encouraged to file both simultaneously so as to kind of help move both cases along. If you become a US citizen and ultimately renounce it, can you still apply to become a green card holder again? The answer to this is most likely yes, unless you're renouncing your US citizenship for tax purposes. And that's primarily, I'm pretty sure that's the main thing. If you're renouncing your US citizenship for tax purposes, they're going to say, no, you can't apply for you can't apply to get your green card again because you let go of it because you didn't want it for tax purposes. So it's kind of like a little bit of tax evasion. So careful there. We want to make sure that everything is all good across the board. Any other questions by anyone? Cori, do you think we've missed or skipped anything important to this afternoon that we can chat about?
I don't think we skipped anything. I think that covered it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all for attending and joining us this afternoon. If you have any questions, again, consider us a resource. Let us know what we can do to support you. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and have a lovely rest of your afternoon. Bye.